our chosen freedom. We are so honored that joining us tonight from Guatemala are Bernardo's life partner, Isabel Matzir, and daughter, Ixch'umil, both incredible human rights defenders themselves. Naka Kelly Kulinik, and welcome to everyone who has joined us. We feel humbled by knowing that with us this afternoon are members of Todos Somos Guatemala. We are all Guatemala, breaking the silence, and other longtime Guatemalan solidarity activists in Ottawa, Toronto, and the West Coast. Please do identify your organizations in the chat so we can let Bernardo know about all this support. Before we hear from Isabel and Ixch'umil, some important housekeeping. This webinar is available in both English and Spanish. Go to the bottom of the screen and click on the round symbol that looks like a globe. Then choose the language of your choice. Simultaneous interpretation will be provided by our wonderful interpreters, Marta Singh and Kath Nygaard. Please put your questions in the chat as you listen, and we will address as many of them as time permits when we move into our Q&A later on. Now, given that this online session includes participants from many areas of so-called Canada, it is not possible to do a specific land acknowledgement statement. Land acknowledgement statements are specific to the lands, territories, and the nations that have traditionally been their guardians. But for me, I live on the unceded and unsurrendered Algonquin Anishinaabe territory in the city now called Ottawa. I recognize that the First Nations people never ceded or legally signed away their lands to the Crown or to Canada. While it is important to acknowledge the land, we must go further than just a brief statement, as it can be identified as performative allyship. We need to describe why we stand in solidarity and how we plan to take further steps to ensure Indigenous communities receive justice for the crimes committed against them. Amnesty Canada holds a strong commitment to supporting and amplifying Indigenous voices and experiences, but of course, we must push further. Examples include the No More Stolen Sisters campaign for missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit peoples, the Action Against Coerced Sterilization, and the many campaigns protesting resource extraction in Indigenous communities across the globe, including the case of Bernardo. Amnesty is inherently a settler colonial organization based on stolen land that was acquired via genocide, and so it is our duty as non-Indigenous folks to prioritize unlearning and relearning our practices, perceptions, and ways of being. While these effects cannot be completely stopped, we must support the healing and recovery of communities through whatever means required. We urge you to stand in solidarity with these communities by educating yourself, attending demonstrations, workshops, and more provided by First Nations, Métis, and Inuit members, while also lobbying the government for change. Joining us for Right for Rights is already a step in the right direction. As it relates to our session today, I recently attended a solidarity rally for threatened and jailed Wet'suwet'en land defenders fighting the Coastal GasLink pipeline, and I hope that many of you show the same support for Indigenous defenders here in so-called Canada, as the cause is merely identical to the reality of the Maya Quechua people. I would also like to acknowledge that Amnesty Canada's Secretary General Keti Nivyabandi is here, and we ask if she is able to share a few words before we start.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for that wonderful introduction and opening. That was so thoughtful. Thank you so much. So I'm Keti Nivyabandi from Amnesty International Canada. I'm joining you as well from unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory in Ottawa, where our offices are headquartered. And I just wanted to come in and to really say thank you to Isabel and Ixch'umil, to really thank you on behalf of the full organization and movement here in Canada, and to let you know that the case of Bernardo is very, very close to our hearts, and we are very much in solidarity with you. So I wanted to offer that, to convey that to you from the beginning. And as Rachel just rightly pointed out, there's so many similarities between the violations of the rights of Indigenous peoples right here in Canada and across South America, and in particular in Guatemala. There are enormous similarities, and I hope that this session will build obviously awareness on Bernardo's case, but really help us to connect the dots between the violation of indigenous people's rights, land, and natural resources. And that's a very important focus for us, certainly even for the years to come. So I wanted really to thank you, to welcome you really warmly on this chat, and say that we stand with you very much as we have always have. So wishing you a wonderful session, and I'll hand it back to you, Rachel.
Thank you so much for those words, Ketty. And so now it is a huge privilege for me to introduce our guest in Guatemala. Isabel Matzir is a respected, eloquent defender of human rights and the life partner of Bernardo Caal. Their daughter Nicte is already courageously lifting her voice to speak out for the defense of indigenous territories and rights and the release of her father. As we hear from them, please add your own questions into the chat and we will get to as many of them as possible if the time spares. First question for Isabel is, can you tell us about the struggle that Bernardo was leading before he was jailed and what the evidence is that led to his conviction?
Sorry, I'm going to just enter here. It's Kathy from Amnesty. Marta, it appears that your microphone is muted and our guests are not hearing the interpretation to Spanish.
Gracias por este espacio.
Thank you so much for this space. Bernardo's struggle is a 20-year struggle. Since they invented the crimes, this has been an ongoing struggle in the community. And in this case, he had accompanied the communities in different aspects, noting that the communities and Bernardo had achieved that the Supreme Court of Justice would suspend the hydroelectric projects. And they invented major crimes against him, which are criminal cases against him. And so in this case, the crimes were invented 2 years after the alleged events. And so truly there was no evidence against Bernardo to convict him. There was no evidence. Amnesty International carried out a major research, and they showed that there was no evidence against him, that the judge made a ruling without any legal arguments. And so in the, on a legal level, there's no evidence against Bernardo. And the prosecutors, what they showed was just statements, statements from the company's workers, but these were statements that were contradictory, and between the different statements, there wasn't any medical examinations or nothing. There was nothing to convict him. In this case, all the credibility was given to a few of the workers from the company, and it completely ignored that other workers from the same company had provided contradictory information to the other witnesses. And that is Bernardo's situation. There's a case where there is no evidence against him.
Thank you for that, Isabel. And so my next question comes after this statement. So Quechua communities and sister organizations have taken legal action in the courts and social protest action on the streets to make visible the injustice that Bernardo has suffered and to call for his release. Can you tell us about these actions, because it does not get reported in our media?
There have been multiple actions in different moments prior to these criminal charges being invented against Bernardo. There were protests in the capital due to the violation of his rights. And then after there was the ruling against Bernardo, there were on many occasions, but mainly in the trials, in the hearing where there were hearings in Caal, the communities went to back and support Bernardo and to show their support and solidarity. And one of the most important expressions of solidarity was on June 4th of 2021, just 6 months ago, amid the middle of the pandemic. And there was a lot of repression from the Guatemalan state, but regardless, many of the peoples, the Beten peoples, and from northern Guatemala in Chaval, and also in Alta Verapaz, they joined this struggle, and there was a huge march for Bernardo's freedom, and also for other political prisoners that are being held. And so this important march with thousands of people, where a lot of organizations joined the march, and many communities, the Coponchi, Echi, Queches, and many of the Mixteca communities, the men and women, they joined in these actions from the 4 points. They came together to march. And these protests were not covered in the mass media in Guatemala. They weren't even covered by the local media. What we saw was a lot of indifference, and it was only the alternative media outlets and social media that covered this activity. It was a very important activity that showed a lot of solidarity for Bernardo, and that is how on other dates in August and in other dates there have been different protests, and people have been showing their support for Bernardo. And there have also been demonstrations against the corruption and the impunity in our country. There continues to be protests to defend the rivers, the Cabo and Ixch'umil rivers, and also calling for a consultation where over 25,000 people have said no to these projects. And only 12 people said yes. So you can compare those numbers. the Kawo people, but not just the Kawo people, but also the Mayakichi people and the Mayachi people and the Pokomchi people and the Quiche peoples and many other groups have joined this case. They've joined with their voices, with actions, calling for Bernardo Caal's freedom and that of other political prisoners.
Thank you for that, Isabel. That was very inspiring. I know all of the actions that you have been taking throughout the year, and I have seen multiple photos of when you've done all of these rallies, and it's really thoughtful. My next question is going to be for Nikte. So, Nikte, you have been raising your voice in videos and with photo messages on social media to call for the release of your father and respect for the rights of indigenous communities in Guatemala. What is the message that you want people to understand?
The truth is, I want you to know about my father's struggle, that he is defending a river. It's not a criminal action. I want people to know that my father is a human rights defender. And he's not a thief. He's not, everything that they've invented about him. That's not him. I also want them to know that defending life is what we all should be doing. It's what everyone needs to do. We need to defend and take care of the Mother Earth, that the water is something that needs to be defended and protected. And that's what I would like you to know. That's what I want you to hear.
Thank you, Nikte. And so, what would you like to say to people your own age here in Canada to inspire them that their voices and activism are also important?
I just want them to tell them that they should raise their voices to defend all of our rights. That if they're facing a difficult situation, they shouldn't be silent, that the youth needs to freely express themselves. They need to freely they should need to defend and protect the rivers, the mountains, the natural resources, the Mother Earth, and our dignity. Our dignity, we must defend it. Our lives depend on our Mother Earth. This is the water, the forest, and all of it. And we shouldn't allow them to be destroyed. And that's why we must raise our voices.
And so, any of you can answer this next question, but when was the last time you were able to see Bernardo, and how are his spirits now?
La última vez que yo lo visité fue hace
Last time I was able to visit him was 10 days ago. And spiritually, he is very strong. Spiritually, this has been something that's very important for him, and this struggle that has been carried out in other countries, in other communities, and by other peoples. And about 15 days ago, finally, the girls were able to visit him. After 20 months of not having been able to visit him due to the restrictions for minors. And so after more than 20 months, the girls were finally able to hug him. They were able to have breakfast and lunch with him. It was a really moving and so important, both for Bernardo and the girls. And these visits are, they're very helpful for him, but also the messages that we print and we share with him. These are messages from abroad. When people write him, they send him, Facebook messages or through other channels, whether it's Twitter or, whatever other channel that you're using, we print these messages out and we bring them to him. And this has been very important for him to feel good. It's been very important, and that will continue. Bernardo has been writing for the 3 years and 10 months that he has been in prison. He's always been writing, regardless of the pandemic and the restrictions for visitors. And it's also important that from abroad, you can continue writing, and that there is this communication in both senses, both from him going out but also for him. And so this is what we can share. His physical health, this has been something that's been very, very hard. He's been in prison for almost 4 years, but spiritually, emotionally, he is very strong, and that is very, very important.
And so we have another question. So again, either of you can answer, probably Isabel. How dangerous is it for you to be speaking out and challenging the injustices suffered by Bernardo and the Quechua communities affected by the dams?
En Guatemala es sumamente peligroso el seguir alzando la voz.
In Guatemala, it is extremely dangerous to continue to raise our voices and defend natural resources, because we live in a racist state, a state that where the rights of indigenous people aren't of interest. They don't seek to fulfill those rights. The state, this colonial state, this state that is based on the patriarchy, and there's so much racism. They see the Maya people as if they aren't people, as if they didn't have rights. And so they're not interested in malnutrition. The state isn't interested in malnutrition or poverty or the unhumane conditions. And so if we continue to raise our voices and make complaints, this puts us at a high risk. And there have been a lot of murders every year. There are too many murders of human rights defenders. Each year we see increasing numbers of criminalization of the prosecution of defenders. And in this case, we have seen this is the strategy being used by the Guatemalan state, and it's to persecute through legal charges against journalists and all of those people who talk about the injustice, and not just in relation to natural resources and the common goods, but also for other reasons. And for that reason, it is dangerous. It's very dangerous in Guatemala today. And we've seen how there's more corruption. There's agreements between the different corrupt parties, and they've come together, and they are freeing the prisoners who were accused of corruption. They are being released, but there's a persecution of journalists, of human rights defenders, men and women human rights defenders. This is a very sad situation, a very unfortunate situation. And more we see boys and girls who are lacking their mother or father because they have been criminalized. And so this is something that is extremely unfortunate for our country, because we are facing a very difficult situation. Since the Saqijix ended or was terminated, and they dismantled the Special Prosecutor's Office Against Impunity, and Juan Francisco Sandoval was replaced. We're in a very difficult era where the Guatemalan state is returning to practices that we saw during the internal armed conflict. And this is the persecution of men and women leaders from the different communities and peoples. The risk is that we will be criminalized, that we will be murdered, or that we will be disappeared. This is a huge risk that we are experiencing. This is something we've seen increase over the last 3 years since the Saqijix left, and the situation is getting worse. We see the highest levels of, we see that both the Supreme Court of Justice and the Constitutional Court are aligned with this situation of crisis in our country, because the judiciary has been completely co-opted, and that's why we are fighting against huge monsters in our country.
And so my next question is, did you anticipate his unlawful arrest, and how did you feel and react when Bernardo was arrested?
Sabíamos que contra Bernardo
We knew that there wasn't any evidence against Bernardo for any crime. So we knew that the cases that would be presented would be very weak, but we had already seen
se habían inventado contra defensores
cases that had been invented against human rights defenders and other resistance initiatives. We had already seen this happen. We saw that there had previously been persecution and the criminalization of our brothers and sisters from the Bares Huetenango, and also against our brothers and sisters in La Puya, in San Jose del Golfo, and also other brothers and sisters. So we had already seen we saw how these different mega projects, these hydroelectric and energy projects, we saw how they were trying to scare the communities and to invent crimes, to be able to operate without respecting the collective rights, without respecting human rights of the communities. And so we'd already seen this situation, and we knew that it was very probable that any day, at any time, Bernardo would be murdered, or that he would be kidnapped, or that he would be criminalized. And so this was a situation that we didn't want to live, we didn't want it to happen, but we knew that these mega projects, we know that they operate in this way. And so in this case, the Caal River has a lot of hydroelectric projects. There are a lot of projects that have already captured the river. In Caal, there is the largest Central American projects. There are 5 dams that are diverting the river. These are the Renas hydroelectric projects, and then also the Oshek and Sayat projects. And so we knew that we were denouncing very, very large companies, and that they have all of the financial resources and possibilities to cause us harm. So we knew that if there was going to be a legal case that would be weak, because Bernardo never commit any crimes, but at the same time, we knew how these mega projects were operating in Guatemala. We saw this happening in the different areas of Guatemala. And so we didn't expect him to be imprisoned for a long time. However, in this case, there have been setbacks and delays in his case. There have been delays in all of the different phases of this process. And that's why he's been in prison for almost 4 years already. And there isn't a final ruling in his case within the Guatemalan justice system. And so this has been, this is very difficult. We knew that it was probable, but we also knew that there was, once again, no evidence. So when he was arrested, we thought he would be released in just 2 or 3 days. And then those 2 or 3 days were months. And then after months, they became years. And so this has been a very exhausting process, both for him and for the family, and also for the communities.
Thank you, Isabel. And so we have seen these photos of protests where Quechua women have carried empty water pots. How has construction of the dams affected the water in the river and the water that the communities need? So what is the situation of access to water for communities now?
Afectó a miles de
This has affected thousands of families. For hundreds of years, they have lived in the communities where our ancestors have always lived. And so it's important to remember that in this case, the communities they establish themselves along the rivers. So in this case, there are many communities that have been affected, and they weren't allowed access to water. But beyond the issue of access to water, it's access to food, because the rivers provide food for the families, different plants, fish, crabs. These are all this food that's part of our diet. This is our daily food sources. And so when they kidnap the river, this means that it all changes. And so instead of going to fish, the families have to see, how they can, find food and understand the context of the communities where there isn't employment, there's no roads, there's no education, there's no healthcare. This is essentially just a sentencing of increased malnutrition. This is one of the departments with the highest number of deaths of children under 5 due to malnutrition. And it's the department that has the highest number of cases of malnutrition. And so, these statistics, the mass media talks about it, since this is the poorest department of the country, or La Paz is the highest number of malnutrition. But what they never do is they don't tie this to access to food or access to water. It's really important to make those connections because it's essential in the daily life of these families. If they don't have access to water and they don't have access to food, they have to be able to have the access like they had before. It's so important for so many of their daily activities, and beyond just food and drinking water, but for many other activities. This had a huge impact on the communities. And so this has been very, very difficult. And we've been able to see how it has had a negative impact on the communities. But it's not just an impact on the people, but also more broadly on the ecosystems and biodiversity. This has been a very, very huge impact, because all of the life that exists in the rivers no longer exists because the rivers are dry. And so this is something that's extremely difficult for the families and most specifically for children.
And so my last question is for the both of you, for Isabel and Nikte. In all of this dangerous, disturbing reality in which your voices are ignored or criminalized or silenced, how important is solidarity actions from Canada calling for Bernardo's release and for rights and justice for Quechua communities?
En este caso es muy importante el acompañamiento.
In this case, the accompaniment is so important because the majority of the Guatemalan peoples have a lot of fear. There's a lot of repression. Because when one person raises their voice and joins the struggle, they face persecution. And so it's extremely important because in this case, it has been the international accompaniment which has meant that Bernardo Calcho's case continues forward in different spaces, that it's known and it hasn't been forgotten. It's not forgotten that he is unjustly imprisoned. And that, like him, there are hundreds of people in the country who are facing the same criminalization, the same repression, and really around the world, this is the case. It's horrible what you live as a family in these circumstances. So our hope has always been, we've had a strong hope in the international spaces because we believe that without that, the Guatemalan government or they won't be able to scare other countries because of the cases that have support or accompaniment. And so this has been very important that our voices come together with the voices of others from other countries to continue this struggle together. And in this case, it's been extremely important for Bernardo and also for the communities that people in Canada and other countries are accompanying this struggle. This gives us, it's a breath of fresh air. It gives us hope. It gives us strength, and that we don't feel alone in our struggle. These are very difficult struggles. And so, unfortunately, this is a long struggle. This has already been several years that we have been directly experiencing the impacts of the criminalization strategy. And so we're very thankful. We're thankful to Canada and other countries that have joined their voices to fight together as we must, as brothers and sisters, because we live together on this planet and we have to have this connection between human beings. We're brothers and sisters, and that's why we are so thankful that you have provided this support in different ways and from different spaces. So thank you so much.
Just before I move on, does Nikte have anything else to say in response to that question?
Solo quisiera si se pudiera repetir la pregunta, es que no entendí muy bien.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question. Can you repeat the question, please?
So how you value the importance of these solidarity actions from Canada for Bernardo's release and for the rights and justice of Quechua communities.
Muy bien, muchas gracias.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Primero que nada, siento que
So
es
first off, I
muy
think
importante
that it's very important for us, for all of us, to have this accompaniment,
a los defensores y
to have
defensoras de
support
derechos
for
humanos
human rights
que
defenders
se encuentran encarcelados,
who are imprisoned,
padre Bernardo
as is the
Caal.
case of my father,
Como
Bernardo
agradecimiento a
Caal,
todos
and
los
that's why
defensores
we're
de derechos
thankful
humanos,
for all the people who fight for human rights and justice, and I'm thankful for Amnesty International. Thank you for the accompaniment you've provided. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nikte and Isabel. So we have obviously heard loud and clear from the two of you that our action and solidarity with Quechua communities in Guatemala truly matters. And so this means that together we truly are stronger. And so now this is the action component of today. So here are some things that you can do. You can sign our e-action and share it with your friends and family, encouraging them to sign too, and you will see the link in the chat. So already over 17,000 people have signed, but let's try to boost that total to more than 20,000, if not even more. As well as you can write a letter to Guatemala's Attorney General, and let's flood her with masses of letters. And you can find those instructions in both English and in Spanish on our Write-a-thon page, and the link is also in the chat. And also, please take our social media solidarity action. Create a sign that calls for freedom for Bernardo Caal, and please include how defending a sacred river and indigenous rights is not a crime. Take a picture with your sign beside water that matters to you, such as a river, and send us your photo, and we will post on social media to make visible our solidarity with Bernardo and the communities. Now we have just a couple of minutes left, but don't go yet because we have a beautiful 3-minute video letter by Nicte to show you. Before that, let me thank our dear friends Isabel and Nicte for their words, for their tireless defense of dignity, for their courage, and for inspiring us. Tell Bernardo that we will not stop until he is free. And thank you to our amazing interpreters Marta Singh and Kath Nygaard behind the scenes. And thank you to all of you for joining us, for believing that another world of human rights and justice is possible and that we must struggle for it together. But the last word goes to Nicte, and now you can take a listen to this video.
Para nosotras, la vida y toda la actividad social de las comunidades está en dependencia de los cerros y ríos. Es importante la disposición del agua, elemento vital para las actividades cotidianas, como para riego de cultivos y preparación de alimentos. Los ríos también nos proveen alimentos, como jutes, cangrejos y peces, contribuyen a la seguridad alimentaria. Esto demuestra nuestro alto grado de conciencia, de respeto a la naturaleza y de urgencia a la participación social y política para no permitir el despojo de nuestros recursos naturales. El extractivismo en los megaproyectos despojan a las mujeres de sus derechos, derecho al agua, derecho a vivir en territorios libres de contaminación. El Estado de Guatemala criminaliza de forma sistemática y persigue a las y los defensores de derechos humanos que luchan por la defensa de tierra, territorio y recursos naturales frente al extractivismo y los megaproyectos. La criminalización es el uso indebido de proceso penal contra defensoras y defensores de derechos humanos. Generalmente la criminalización va precedida por una campaña de estigmatización. Mancha la imagen personal de los líderes y sus familias. Mi papá durante años ha sido víctima de varias campañas de estigmatización. Durante más de un año ha sido criminalizado porque interpuso varias denuncias en contra de las empresas que han eliminado nuestros cerros y han secuestrado el río Cabón y el río Checa. Desde muy pequeñas, mi hermana y yo hemos sufrido las consecuencias de la criminalización contra defensoras y defensores de derechos humanos. Yo he aprendido a vivir sin la compañía física de mi papá. Todos los días tengo en mi memoria y en mi corazón su sonrisa, sus consejos, su amor, su fuerza, su lucha. Sé que soy una de las miles de semillas de las valientes resistencias. Mi papá me ha enseñado que defender la tierra es un deber, no un delito. Soy una de las miles de niñas y niños que han sido separados de su mamá, papá o ambos, porque el Estado de Guatemala criminaliza a quienes reclaman su derecho de consulta, su derecho a la vida y cuidado de los recursos naturales. Mi hermana y yo desde nuestra niñez hemos sido testigos de las injusticias del Estado de Guatemala, de la corrupción e impunidad que practican algunos jueces y fiscales del Ministerio Público, de la falta de moral de personas que se dejan utilizar para hacer denuncias falsas. El honor no se negocia, la dignidad no se negocia, los recursos naturales no se negocian, la autonomía de los pueblos no se negocia. Las transformaciones sociales han sido a costa de vidas y cárcel de sus líderes y lideresas. Por eso hoy quiero dar 1.000.000 de gracias a todos los pueblos que siguen resistiendo a pesar de que sus defensoras y defensores han sido criminalizados. Ellos y ellas luchan y seguirán luchando por la defensa de la tierra, memoria, agua, vida y territorio.
And so that brings us to the end of this session for Bernardo Caal. If you would like to attend the next one for Wendy Galarza, that will be coming up next at 6 p.m.
Thank you very much, Rachel, and everyone for joining this session. As you can see, we had a video just joined there because we're about to watch a really beautiful moment in Regina, but I just wanted to give the last word to say thank you to Isabel and Nikte. And please do go to our National Marathon page. I'm putting that in the chat right now, where you can join the next session with Wendy Galarza in just 15 minutes.
Muchas gracias a ustedes por la invitación.
We're live right now.
Gracias.
Thank
Gracias.
you. Thank you all. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for everything. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much. And as I said, we're going to go live right now to the group 91 in Regina, who you can see here. They're just getting ready to light up the University of Regina sign in Regina. It's going to be lit up in yellow for Human Rights Day, for Right for Rights. Can you hear us, Jim?
Yes, I can.
Great. Sorry about that. We were just closing our other session.
Right.
But yeah, let us know what's going on over there.
Well, we're assembled out in front of our wonderful University of Regina sign. The university is quite proud of it. You can see it's quite substantial there. And often we talk about how much it cost. So we're getting maximum benefit out of the sign today. You can see it there. And our sunset today, I think, was supposed to be 4:54, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. And then I checked it out, and the end of legal civil twilight is going to be 5:33. So that's when it gets dark enough that I'm not sure when they'll put the lights on. The lights are on now? Okay. Yes, we can see the lights are on, but it's not quite dark enough. Yeah, we'll just have a quick look here. We'll check out these lights. Yeah, we need to be just a little bit darker, but you can see this is a great sign. And we have some great people here.
It's great to see all of you braving the cold for this this beautiful moment.
It is a little cool here. It is a little cool, but we're quite happy to be out here, and looking forward to. We're still letter writing. Of course, letter writing started for us on December 7th, and we're still going at it. You know, there's lots of issues that need the attention of people that can change things for us, and we just have to keep pestering them or reminding them that we're here and we know what's going on, and we want them to change things for us and help the people who need help.
Yeah, that's lovely. We were just hearing from Isabel and Nikte, who are the family members of Bernardo Caal, and I know that they'll be thrilled to see that there's people out all across the country in support of them. We can a little bit see the sign lighting up now. It's getting a bit darker.
I think so. And I'm a little concerned about the batteries, and cell phones don't like cold, and but it's fully charged. I'm confident that it's going to stay going here. What's the temperature like where are you in Ottawa or Toronto?
I'm in Ottawa personally, and we've got quite a lot of snow here, but there are people here from all across the country. So if people want to say in the chat where they're joining us from, we can see whether everyone has quite as snowy a scene as you.
Yes, we've had strange thaws, and now it's cold. And just a few days ago, it was above zero. Snow was melting, and we just don't know what it's going to be from one week to the next.
And will you stay out there for a while to see how the sign lights up?
Oh, we definitely will. And I don't know what you might have that picture. Gord took a picture of it last night. Last night was when they first put the yellow lights on. So he took a picture. I'm not sure whether you have that there with you, but I don't think we're going to be here long enough to see it lit up quite like that. I know my fingers are starting to get a little, frosty.
Yes, I'm
And-
sure. Well, it's beautiful to see. And I know people here are really loving to see you all out there in Regina. We will maybe let you go soon so that your hands don't freeze off. But thank you so much for showing us this and for joining us live at our virtual marathon.
Well, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to share Regina's enthusiasm with you tonight.
Yes, we know Regina is always one of our most enthusiastic Right for Rights events. So we're thrilled to have you join us.
Okay.
Okay, well, for everyone else, we're going to head over. If you go to the National Marathon page at amnesty.ca/W4R Marathon, I'll put that in the chat again. You can join us in 15 minutes live with Wendy Galarza and Norma from Amnesty Mexico. Okay, bye, Regina.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.